Loud isn't strong. It's scared. Why do we mistake volume for strength? Really, think about it. That loud voice in the room, the one constantly asserting, interrupting, performing, we assume that's confidence. But most of the time, it's fear wearing a mask. Noise isn't power. It's panic, flailing to stay in control. You've seen it, right? That person who can't stop talking, who fills every silence with something, anything, just to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. That's not strength. That's avoidance. Now look at the opposite. The quiet person. The one who doesn't jump to prove themselves. Who listens more than they speak. That's unsettling, isn't it? Because silence like that suggests stability. Kierkegaard called it the silence of inwardness, a kind of depth most people never touch. Not because they can't, but because silence terrifies them. It forces you to face what's real. No noise to hide behind. You've probably been told that to be heard, you have to shout. But here's the truth. The strongest people in the room aren't shouting. They're choosing when to speak. And when they do, it lands, because it's not reactive, it's grounded. Still, here's the kicker. Sometimes the loudest people are just trying to convince themselves, and sometimes the quietest ones already know. So if you've been doubting your silence, maybe you're not lacking confidence. Maybe you're just not addicted to noise. Let's push this further, because the next part, it's not just about silence, it's about presence. Society rewards noise, not wisdom. Look around. Everything's about visibility. Be loud, be bold, be seen, post more, say more, perform more. From social media to job interviews to dating apps, the ones who get noticed are the ones who make the most noise. But here's the question no one asks. Does being seen mean being wise or just being available? Society doesn't reward depth. It rewards volume. Not the kind you measure in substance, but in decibels. The louder you are, the more confident you seem, the more passionate, the more worthy of attention. But how often do the loudest voices in the room actually lead? Really lead? With clarity, with vision, with truth? Not often. Because noise gets attention, but not necessarily respect. You feel it, don't you? That subtle pressure to show up all the time, to brand yourself, to market your thoughts, to always have a take, even if it's half-baked. It's exhausting. And deep down, you know it. There's a quiet violence in constantly needing to prove your worth. But wisdom? Wisdom doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It waits. It listens. It speaks when it matters, and that's why it's so rare in public life. Because restraint doesn't go viral. You might think that staying quiet, being thoughtful, is weakness in a world of megaphones. But often, it's the strongest choice you can make. So the next time you feel that pull to speak just to be heard, ask yourself, is this expression or just performance? Next, we'll dig into what real presence feels like. Not curated, not performed, but lived. History's quiet strategists shaped empires. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, it watches, it calculates. The people who shaped history the most weren't always the loudest. They were the quietest, the ones who knew when to hold their tongue, when to listen, and when to strike. Take Queen Elizabeth I, surrounded by political threats, religious conflict, and power-hungry men. She didn't win by shouting them down. She won by playing the long game. She listened. She read the room. She let others underestimate her, and then outmaneuvered them. That's not silence as weakness. That's silence as strategy. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, philosopher of the Stoics, ruled one of the most powerful empires in history. But he didn't dominate with speeches or spectacle. His meditations weren't meant for an audience. They were private reflections, grounded, disciplined, brutally honest. He led by example, not performance. He mastered himself first. That's why people followed. Even George Washington, the general who refused to be king, led with restraint. He didn't seize power. He stepped back, twice, and in doing so built a precedent stronger than any crown. Look at modern leaders like Tim Cook. He's not flashy, he's not loud. But Apple didn't fall after Steve Jobs. It got sharper, more stable, more focused. Because leadership isn't noise. It's clarity in chaos. So don't let the volume fool you. History wasn't shaped by the loudest voices. It was shaped by the ones who understood the moment, stayed grounded, and moved deliberately. In the next section, we'll talk about why silence makes people uncomfortable and what that discomfort reveals about us. Jung and the shadow of quiet power. There's a reason silence unsettles people. It holds a mirror. Jung would say that silence is where the shadow lives, not the spooky kind, the real kind, the parts of you you've buried, your fears, your anger, your strength. The quiet ones? They go there. They face it. Carl Jung saw introverts not as shy or weak, but as inward travelers. People who draw their energy not from the spotlight, but from solitude, from reflection, from depth. And in that depth, something powerful happens. Integration, that's the real work. Not projecting a polished version of yourself to the world, but meeting the chaos inside and staying with it. The shadow, as Jung called it, isn't evil. It's simply unacknowledged, unspoken. The loud ones avoid it. They blast music over it. They chase attention to drown it out. But the quiet ones, they listen. They learn its language. And that's why they often carry a presence that feels still but heavy, like a mountain. You can't explain it, but you feel it. That's the weight of someone who's integrated their shadow, who's faced their fears instead of performing over them. You ever meet someone who says very little but it hits when they do? That's not an accident. That's the voice of someone who's done the inner work. Who knows themselves? Not just the bright parts, but the dark ones too. So if you're quiet and people don't get it, good. That means you're not performing. You're becoming. Up next, we'll break down why this kind of quiet power doesn't show up in our feeds and how noise culture keeps us from becoming whole. The quiet hold more than they say. We've been taught to see silence as emptiness, as something missing. But here's the truth. Silence isn't absence. It's containment. It's pressure building behind the dam. It's potential, not lack. And the people who speak less, they're often carrying more, not less. Think about it. The quiet person in the room isn't just zoning out. They're tracking everything. The tone, the tension, the unsaid. While others are busy talking, they're absorbing. They're seeing what others miss. And when they do speak, it cuts deeper. Because it's not clutter. It's concentrated. Psychologically, this is no accident. The brain doesn't just process language. It processes patterns. Quiet people have more space to notice, to reflect, to hold conflicting thoughts without needing to resolve them right away. That takes strength. It's much easier to react. It's much harder to wait, to listen without inserting yourself. But that's where influence lives. Not in the volume of your voice, but in the precision of your impact. You've probably felt it. Someone says one sentence and it echoes for days. That's not luck. That's restraint turned into power. Jung might call it an integrated psyche, the kind that doesn't need to dominate because it understands. The quiet hold more than they say. And when they choose to speak, people listen. Because silence, when intentional, sharpens every word that follows. So no, silence isn't passive. It's prepared. And in a world obsessed with noise, that kind of control is rare. Next, we'll uncover how this quiet power challenges modern identity and why being unseen might just be your greatest strength. Power isn't volume. It's direction. Power doesn't shout. It moves. Quietly, deliberately. And if you really want to understand how silence works in power, you've got to look through the Machiavellian lens. Because to thinkers like Machiavelli and later Robert Greene, silence isn't weakness, it's warfare. Say less than necessary. Never outshine the master. These aren't just clever sayings, they're survival tactics. In political spaces, courtrooms, boardrooms, even friend groups, the person who talks the most often exposes the most. Emotions, motives, vulnerabilities, all laid out in real time. But the quiet one? They don't reveal, they read. They watch the room shift. They feel the energy drop. They know when to step in, and more importantly, when not to. Silence gives you something loud never can. Control. Control over how you're perceived, how your message lands, and how much power you actually hold. Because when you speak less, people fill in the gaps. They wonder what you're thinking. They lean in. And that mystery, that's leverage. Think about it like this. Volume spreads your energy wide, but direction? Direction focuses it, like a laser. Quiet power doesn't need to be big. It needs to be aimed. So no, silence isn't passive. It's calculated. It's presence without exposure, influence without noise. And in the next section, we'll unpack why our culture's obsession with constant expression might be keeping us from discovering our most potent, precise selves. Why we fear the silent ones. Why do silent people make us nervous? Seriously, think about it. You walk into a room, everyone's chatting, but there's that one person sitting back, saying nothing. Instantly, your brain starts spinning. Are they judging me? Are they shy? Are they dangerous? Silence unsettles us, not because of what it says, but because of what it doesn't. Socially, we're wired to expect signals, smiles, nods, words, cues that tell us we're safe, liked, understood. But silence? Silence gives us nothing. And when we get nothing, we fill in the blanks. That's why the quiet ones get labeled mysterious or intense. Not because they do anything, but because we can't figure them out. And that lack of access, that unknown, it feels like power. Here's the uncomfortable part. It's not the quiet person that's making you uneasy. It's you. It's your own need for control, for certainty, for feedback. And when someone doesn't give you that, it exposes something raw. We don't fear the silent ones because they're weak. We fear them because they might not need us at all. That kind of self-contained energy, that non-performative presence, flips the social script. It resists approval seeking. It says, I'm here, but I'm not here for you. And that's rare. That's magnetic. And yeah, sometimes that's terrifying. So if you've ever felt misunderstood because you're quiet, know this. People aren't confused by your silence. They're just not used to someone who doesn't need their permission to exist. Coming up, we'll look at how reclaiming that kind of presence can radically shift how you move through the world without saying a word. Turn stillness into strategy. Stillness isn't just a vibe, it's a strategy. And if you know how to use it, you don't have to speak louder to have more impact. You just have to speak smarter. Start here. Speak less. Not to shrink, but to sharpen. Before you talk, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Is it adding clarity or just filling air? When you speak only when it matters, your words carry weight. People start paying attention because they know you're not just reacting, you're choosing. Second, become a watcher. In any room, power is shifting constantly, not just through words, but through body language, glances, silence, timing. The one who sees the game clearly doesn't have to play it loudly. They just need to understand where leverage lives. That's how you influence without making noise. That's how you lead without pushing. Want to develop real gravitas? Drop the performance. Don't try to look powerful. Be comfortable in your pauses. Be unbothered by not being the loudest. Let people lean into your energy, not be overwhelmed by it. Gravitas doesn't come from dominating the room. It comes from being so rooted that the room adjusts to you. Silence isn't weakness, it's precision, it's tension, it's presence. And when you learn to hold it, not anxiously, but intentionally, it becomes one of the most effective tools you have. So don't try to outshine, out-center. In a world that's addicted to noise, your stillness can become your loudest message. Next, we'll close by reframing what it really means to be heard and why the quiet path may lead to the deepest kind of power there is. Silence builds the strongest inner core. Silence isn't just a tactic. It's a forge. It's where the strongest parts of you are built, not on display, but within. In the stillness, you're stripped of noise, of performance, of needing to be seen. And that's where the real work begins. We don't talk enough about how hard it is to sit with yourself, to hear your own thoughts, unfiltered, to feel discomfort and not distract from it. But that's where strength grows. Not in front of people, not on stages or feeds, but in quiet moments when no one's watching. And you're not performing for anyone, not even yourself. Resilience? It's not loud. It doesn't always look like grit or hustle. Sometimes it's choosing not to react, not to lash out, not to prove. It's pausing long enough to ask, what's really going on here? That takes discipline. That takes restraint. That takes inner structure. Kierkegaard wrote about the dizziness of freedom, that terrifying space between choice and consequence. Silence puts you face to face with that freedom. It forces you to feel it, not run from it, and in doing so, it deepens you. Because once you've built a self that can withstand that silence, you're no longer tossed around by every opinion, every conflict, every glance. Quiet doesn't mean hollow. It means anchored. It means you've found something solid in a world built on noise and distraction. And maybe that's the most powerful thing of all. Not needing to prove your strength because you've already lived through the silence that made it real. Now, let's bring it all together and talk about what it really means to embody quiet power in a world that doesn't know how to listen. Quiet is the final power move. Quiet isn't the absence of power, it's the final form of it. The kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't perform, doesn't need validation to stand tall. In a world that screams to be seen, choosing silence is radical. It's not retreat, it's refinement. It's not hiding, it's honing. Power isn't about taking up space, it's about owning your presence. The ones who speak the least, they often control the most, not because they dominate, but because they direct. Their words are chosen, their actions deliberate, their energy felt without explanation. So here's your call. Stop chasing loud. Stop equating volume with value. Start cultivating silence, not as emptiness, but as precision, as focus, as unshakable strength. Let your stillness speak before you do. Let your restraint become your presence, and let the world adjust to you, not the other way around. Because when you no longer need to be loud to be powerful, you've already won.